everyone. This is Stephen Balch, your instructor for Introduction to Macroeconomics at Ozarka College. Today what I'm going to do is go over the solution to problem 16.1 that some of you had some difficulty with on the chapters 15 and 16 assignment that I recently graded. So let's kind of get started here. Basically on this problem 16.1 in the textbook, it gave you some values for various parts of M1 and M2 definitions of money. And of course in chapter 16 we learned about the different definitions of money. The narrow definition, which is what we call M1 money, and the broader version or definition of money, which is called M2 money. And it basically gave you in the textbook the formulas for calculating each of those, and then it gave you the values that you need. For example, different numbers for deposits and currency, savings deposits, money market mutual fund accounts. Gave you all that in Exhibit 16.15, gave you all those values, and then basically all you needed to do was plug those numbers into the formulas. All right? I think what kind of tripped up a few of you, and actually several of you, is that you relied way too much on AI to do this problem for you. And the problem with using AI in this particular case is that the definitions for M1 and M2 money recently changed. The Federal Reserve recently changed it, and it's shown in the textbook correctly. So if you looked in the textbook to calculate the values, you would have gotten the correct answer, and some of you did. But many of you basically plugged it into AI, and it gave you incorrect answers because there's been a recent change in how the two definitions of money are calculated, okay? So you have to be really careful. I know it's very tempting to use AI to do these types of problems, but you run into a problem, especially if you're not actually also looking at the resources, reading the resources that are provided, and making sure that everything is correct. And many of you didn't do that, and that's why you got points counted off on this particular problem, okay? So in the future, it would be a good idea not to rely so much on AI. All right, but let's go through and see what the correct answer should be. All right, so down here at the bottom of this slide, I've shown you basically what M1 money, how you would calculate that. So let's look at it. M1 money, the more narrow definition of money, as we talked about is presented in chapter 16 in the textbook, is basically calculated by taking currency and coin held by the non-banking public plus checkable deposits plus savings deposits. You add all that together and you get M1 money, the total. All right, so in this case it would be M1 would be 538, which is the 538 billion, which is the currency and coin value, and then plus checkable deposits is 609 billion, and then plus savings deposits, which is 4,326 billion. Okay, so you add all that together and you end up with a value of $5,473 billion. Okay, many of you, like I said, because you relied too much on AI, you got that number incorrect. You basically, instead of including the savings deposits in the M1 calculated value, you didn't include that. Again, that's one of the recent changes in how we define M1 money now. And so you got an incorrect value for that part of the problem. So if you did that, you basically only got half. If you got the other one right, then you only got half of the credit for that particular problem. All right, so just let me know if you have questions about how that is calculated. And then M2, most of you got this one correct, but again, I think most of you used AI to get the value. It's just that on this one, the M2 definition of money has not really changed recently. But M2, the way you would calculate it is you would take the M1 value plus the small denomination time deposits plus the money market mutual fund accounts. So in this case, it would be 5,473, which is the value that we got for M1, plus the small denomination time deposits, which was 205 billion, plus the 647 billion for the money market mutual fund accounts. So you would get a total for the M2, or the broader definition of money, of 6,325 billion. Okay, so those are the correct values for that problem 16.1 on the assignment. All right, so I just thought I would go over that with you, but since many of you got at least part of that wrong, some of you missed both of those, but a lot of you got the second one right and the first one wrong, mostly, again, because you relied too much on AI. So just be careful when you're using AI. I know it's tempting to use it, but at least check the answers that it's giving you to make sure they're consistent with the resources that we're using in the textbook, okay? Or the resources that we're using in the course, okay? All right, so like I said, just let me know if you have questions about that. I just thought I'd go over that with you since a lot of you had the incorrect answers on that. So like I said, just let me know if you have questions. I will talk to you next time. Thank you.